Good evening. My name is Sal Tarasi. I'm the director here at LIFS, and on behalf of our entire team, let me thank you for attending our spring residency keynote address. Please know how much we value your important work and your interest in ours. I intend to keep my remarks very brief tonight in order to afford our speakers as much time as possible to present and you to engage with them. So let me focus on three key points. First, as most of you are aware, we view our core mission at LIFS as the creation of trauma-sensitive school environments, which is the focus of the courses we offer as well as our research. Second, in recent years, it has become increasingly apparent that trauma is an equity issue. Namely, children often are, in effect, denied full access and participation in their educational experience because of the effects of interpersonal and systemic traumatic stress. Third, our presenters this evening are educators who are doing the work of intentionally designing equitable school environments. Tonight's objective is to demonstrate the power of this intentionality to collaborate with families and students as equal partners in creating an environment where everyone feels a sense of belonging and empowerment. In closing, let me add that having had the pleasure to work with and learn from both of tonight's speakers, I am very pleased to introduce Dr. Renee Haywood and Kelly Jones.
Thank you so much. This is such an honor to be here. Like Dr. Tarasi said, I'm Dr. Renee Haywood. I am the Assistant Superintendent of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for the Brockton Public Schools.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I am Kelly Jones. I am the Director of Bilingual Education for Brockton Public Schools.
And so when you were waiting for the webinar to start, hopefully you got a chance to look at the activator because we want to get to know each other a little bit. We'll be here in this space just for a short while. But there were 3 questions that were asked of you. And if you didn't get a chance, that's okay. And we'll share ours. You can actually see a little bit about Kelly and I. But the 3 questions are: the season I enjoyed the most is because. So think about that. A person I admire is. And then the last is: if you really knew me, you'd know that. And so even in the chat, if there are a few of you that want to share and lift some things up, that is fine too, just so we can get to know each other before we get started. So I'll start. My name is Dr. Renee Haywood. As I said earlier, the season I enjoy the most is spring because the beautiful birds come out and they sing. And that is a sign of, and it's a metaphor that signifies that I made it through the tough season of winter. The person that I admire the most is Harriet Tubman because of her determination and commitment to help others experience freedom. And if you really knew me, you'd know that I've traveled the world to support young people in music and education in places like Nicaragua, Guatemala, and Adelaide, Australia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Jones. I've worked for Brockton Public Schools for 25 years, and I really love our community. The season I enjoy most is fall because it's sweater weather and the colors of the leaves are gorgeous. The person I admire most is Shirley Chisholm. She said if they don't include you at a table, bring a folding chair. She was a staunch supporter of civil rights and worked tirelessly for justice. If you really knew me, you'd know that in 1994 and 1995, I found myself unexpectedly in a small town called Tvrdšín in Slovakia, where they had never seen an American before, and I found my love of teaching there. We want to start with the acknowledgements, and we want to recognize and publicly declare the genocide and harm on which the United States was established. We also want to proclaim the continued impact the this has had in every aspect of society. And so we also acknowledge the harm that colonialism and white supremacy have brought to these lands, in particular to first American nations, those with African descent and other marginalized identities via racist laws that segregate peoples and produce socioeconomic inequities. We are committed to these acknowledgments because this is American history. The history is well documented, and before any meaningful progress can be made, we must look back and learn from our past and hold ourselves accountable to these acknowledgments. This is the central work of EDI DEI. So I'd like to start tonight by talking about Brockton. This is Brockton. So Brockton is known as a city of champions. It's a diverse gateway city and the Commonwealth's only majority Black city. Renowned abolitionist and ambassador to Haiti, Frederick Douglass, spoke here. It is Shoe City. In the 19th century, it was the nation's largest producer of shoes. We had Thomas Edison throw the switch of the three-wire underground electrical system. And in all honesty, I don't know what that means, but it's important. Home to the first Santa Claus department store in the United States, home of Rocky Marciano, home of Marvin Hagler. And in 2020, we had a population of just over 100,000 residents. Our multilingual students and families, this changes by the day. On February 29th, 2024, we had 5,029 English learners. Those who are identified as first language, not English by DESE is 48.9%. So this may include English learners, they may include former English learners, they may include fully exited, but at some point, these homes, the children had a first language other than English identified. Our home languages are majority Cape Verdean with 37.4%, Haitian at 24.4%, Spanish with 26%, Portuguese with 9%, and Vietnamese with 1%. We have about 32 different languages in our communities in school. Our student demographics, you can see, comes from the DESE website. You can see that 87.8% of our population is comprised of African American, Asian, Hispanic, Native American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and multiracial communities, students. Our white population is 12.2%. 19% of our students are identified with a disability. 84% have high needs, and 74% are identified as low income. Now, if we look at the staffing demographics, it's really the inverse. 73% of our teaching staff is white, and with a much lower population of African American, Asian, Hispanic, Native American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander. We have an inverse of our student population. So we're going to, throughout this session, have some pauses and ponderings. We'd like for you to think for a little bit about your own context. What are the student demographics in your district or school? What are the staffing demographics in your district or school? And how might that influence intentional planning in your district or school? And if you'd like to share, you could put them in the comment section. I'm going to give you a minute, and I'm going to time myself. And so think, respond, ponder. Okay, 1 minute is up, and we will continue.
So when you think about the demographics and the difference, between students and teachers, um, there's some important research that we've discovered that is definitely applicable to Brockton. So there's a lot of opportunity for misunderstandings, especially when you have very different groups. So we have a wonderful opportunity for learning. We're talking about diverse group of students, um, but there's also a staff that does not match that demographic. And so, how is it that we can intentionally plan and acknowledge that difference so that we can, make some change and build better connections without causing harm? Because racism is trauma, and so when there are um, differences, there can be hurt feelings. There can be this racial trauma that is identified by Dr. Ken Hardy as the cumulative effects of racism on an individual's mental, physical, and emotional health. And so, um, some of you may be familiar with that term, microaggressions. Dr. Ken Hardy, and I love this framing of it, it is considered daily assaults on dignity. So that is considered everyday verbal, nonverbal, environmental slights, snubs, or insults, whether intentional or unintentional, which communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target persons based solely upon their marginalized group membership. So that's a big jump, right? We're in school, we're supposed to be getting along and having a student teacher relationship, but when the two groups don't understand each other, and the student body is so diverse, so it's not like everyone understands each other in that group. There can be some missteps and hurt feelings and certain things that may be intended, but most of the time unintended. And so we're going to just take a look really quickly at a couple studies. Rutgers did a study in 2020 on Black adolescents, and it revealed that they averaged over 5 racial discrimination experiences per day. So there were 101 Black youth between the ages of 13 and 17 in a predominantly Black neighborhood in Washington, D.C. And each day for 2 weeks, their experiences on racial discrimination were measured. Their depressive symptoms were measured across that period. And they reported more than 5,600 experiences of racial discrimination in total, which averaged about 5 per day. And Black adolescents are forced to face anti Black microaggressions or daily assaults on their dignity on a daily basis. And so examples of that could be teasing by peers about wearing their hair natural. We've seen that in the news, especially in the Crown Act coming into play. Another is seeing jokes about their race online, witnessing a family member or a friend being treated poorly. So that can be, overall uh, racial incidents, or it could be seeing the effects of systemic racism due to someone's race or ethnicity. Another example, I certainly remember this myself, being asked by a teacher to speak for my entire race. It really puts a student on the spot, and it can be traumatic, and it's definitely connected to race because that is what's being called out in the moment. Here's an interesting quote here. Racial teasing is important because it is one of the most common ways adolescents communicate about race. Critically, young people and adults, such as teachers, often see this teasing as harmless and choose not to address it. These things often happen, in the playground, or normally when we're on a lunch break or what have you. We might not always observe it. Um, but the results of the study show that several types of racial teasing are harmful for Black adolescents. And when you think about it, um, kids are looking for ways to talk about race. And because they don't have a mechanism to do that, um, it happens in the wrong way. And so we have to provide uh, safe spaces to talk about race and to address those differences, talk about them. They're not invisible, they're actually an asset in our classrooms, and we need to lift them up so that everyone can benefit from what is brought into the classroom so that it doesn't result in those daily assaults on dignity. Let's take a look at another one. Um, Jenny Muniz, she did a study on teachers holding prejudiced opinions towards Latino English language learners. And there's an example here uh, where they were restricted to use their home language in the classroom. And there's a quote, they use English at home, I mean at school, and home language at home unless told otherwise. So there's a separation there, and it means to a child, I can't be myself here. I have to be something in school and then something different at home. And I just want to be myself wherever I go. And so in another case, a teacher conflated the Spanish language with crime and low levels of education. And the quote here is Spanish is spoken in all the homes. Parents have low literacy, and violence, drugs, crime are prevalent in the community. What a huge jump, right? Attached to language, attached to identity. All of that negativity is casted upon a child based on someone's biases or prejudices. And so these deficit based attitudes towards students and the prohibition of home language are alarming for several reasons. So, first, research suggests that students' use of home language can be an effective scaffolding tool. I don't know how many of you have taken the SEI endorsement courses, but that is clear in that course. And then, second, studies also show that harboring deficit based beliefs about students can negatively affect student motivation and achievement. And how many of you all have been in a classroom where you knew that your teacher didn't believe in you? When you knew that your teacher had low expectations, and how did that affect your engagement in learning? I'm sure that it made you not want to learn. It made you not want to be there and participate. And in the end, everyone loses. Everyone loses. You're not leveraging the cultural wealth that students who speak different languages, who have different ethnicities and experiences bring to a classroom. You don't get that if you shut it off. And so there's opportunities missed when a person is not able to be their full self within the learning environment. Let's take a look here at this chart. This is an amazing a document that our bilingual department pulled together. This is Brockton. And so as you know, immigration is happening. There's lots of newcomers coming into Massachusetts, and a lot of folks aren't prepared for that. And so there's a rising number of unmet needs for our immigrant newcomers. If you look at the chart on the left, um, newcomers' high school graduation rate remained under 60% until the MCAS requirements were waived during the pandemic. So you see um, that that shift over here, the expected year of graduation, um, and how they weren't performing. But when you look here on the right, we had an enormous number of students enter our school district since July. The total number of new enrollment since July was 1,350 students. And if you move closer to the right, the main language, the majority was Haitian Creole. 632 new students came in speaking Haitian Creole. And then the next language was Spanish, and then the next was Cape Verdean Creole, and then Portuguese. And so you have an influx of students who speak different languages, and they have different needs. And so we have to intentionally plan for their needs. So, this is another one of those pause and ponder moments. What research speaks to the planning needs that you identified based on the student and staff demographics? So, you saw the difference in between the staff and student demographics, and also put in there the issue of immigration and how you need to identify those needs and plan for those needs. So I'm going to set my timer for a minute so that you can take some time to process. All right, our time is up. Let's move on.
So we've thought about who our community is, what does the research say, and who we are and what we value is what we'd like to talk about next. These are some of the important values to Brockton. Not all of them, just some of them. We start out with a quote. Do you know what a foreign accent is? It's a sign of bravery because every child, every family member, every teacher, every administrator, every custodian, every food service worker who communicates in a language that they are not proficient in is brave. They are taking a chance and they're sending a very powerful signal. And that signal is that you are so important to me. What you have to say and what you have to contribute to our community is so important that I'm going to try to communicate in your language. Maintaining the native language is important for children. Brockton Public Schools values it. We value it because of family communication. We value it because of personal identity. We value it because of all of the acculturation and the communities of Brockton. In fact, DESE's new vision for education calls out culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. They call out the value of bilingualism, biculturalism, biliteracy. And so it's that cultural sustaining practices that we value here in Brockton. Brockton also sees that multilingualism is an asset with direct cognitive benefits, more synapses between the lobes of the brain, better executive functioning skills, better problem solving skills. Academic, the research is very clear about those who are bilingual and bicultural and who've benefited from dual language programming outperform their peers on assessments in English and in the target language than others. There are economic benefits in a global society knowing more than one language. Understanding peoples across the world who speak a language is a benefit. And then again, maintaining family and heritage connections. Multilingualism is such an asset to Brockton Public Schools that we put our values into practice. Brockton Public Schools has established the Manthala George Jr. School of Global Studies. It is the only three-strand global studies school in the state of Massachusetts. We have programs in Spanish, Portuguese, and French, K to 5, where all kids get to learn to become bilingual, biliterate, bicultural. We value belonging. Every child, every family member, every staff member should feel like they are at home in Brockton Public Schools. It's a basic human need, and it is protective for our mental health and our academic performance, and it has lifetime benefits such as career satisfaction and community engagement. And a lack of belonging can cause depression and antisocial behavior. So I'd like you to pause and ponder once again now. These are only a few of the values here in Brockton Public Schools. What additional values might you want to see included here? You can think for a minute and put some values in the chat to share with your peers. I'm going to start our minute. Okay, let's come back together.
All right. The values of family and culture. Love it. Districts may need to consider hiring teachers who can speak the native languages of the immigrant children as well as English. All students and staff need to feel safe and connected at school and in their communities. Curiosity, respectful inquiry, and engagement with people different from yourself. A sense of belonging, yes. More after school clubs for learning and celebrating the culture of the countries of origin of the student body. Thank you so much for your comments. So this is how Brockton is planning intentionally. So you got the background, right, of who we are and who our folks are, and so now we've got to intentionally plan to meet the needs of our students. And so you all are familiar with this, I'm sure, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basic human needs, and whenever you're planning, let's just say if you're planning to bake a cake, there's ingredients in there that you need to put in there, right? So you can't just get a cake, put something in a bowl and then all of a sudden it becomes a cake. No, there is a plan. So when you look at this chart here, you first have to take a look at the physiological needs, food and shelter, clothing. I mean, especially when we're talking about uh, those kids who have come from different countries, they are coming from trauma and often into trauma because they're coming into an unknown. The process where that they have gone through to get here has been traumatic. And so we have to take a look at their basic needs. And there are folks in our district that is their specific role, connecting our students and our families to food and shelter and clothing. So that is so important. And then safety needs. I mean, again, students need to feel safe. They need to feel like they can move around, they can be healthy and have resources. And so that is second. And then love and belonging. So we talked about how we believe in belonging. We've created signs, that is a theme of ours. We all belong. It's important, something that we talk about and we try to live. Folks need a sense of connection. And so school and family, they shouldn't be separate. We're in partnership because it does take a village to raise a child. And then esteem. So we talked about the assaults on dignity. We're undoing that with our practices by building our students up and giving them self-esteem, and helping them to recognize who they are so that they can self-actualize, so that they can become who they want to be. So that is the formula for us to bake that cake, and be intentional to build.
So, one of the ways that we structured our intentional planning was with the equitable design approach. Um, Brockton Public Schools was one of six districts in the country to receive a grant to go through this process of equitable design. And this is a recursive, integrated approach where you start at the problem definition, and it's not simple identifying the problem. It is unpacking if it's a problem or a symptom of a problem, and going right down to the root of what is the problem that your district, your community, your school is facing. So let's take an example of parents not coming to conferences. And we could say the problem is parents don't come to conferences, and they're not hearing what the kids are doing in school, how they're doing it. But is that the problem, or is that the symptom of the problem? So could the problem be that um, they don't feel comfortable in the school? Could the problem be that there are people who don't speak their language in the school? Could the problem be that way that it is scheduled is not conducive for families that work the evening shift or the overnight shift? So we spent a lot of time defining what were the problems of Brockton Public Schools. We read an article called "The Problem with Problems," and so we spent a long time here to really get to what are the problems of Brockton Public Schools. And then once we identified a problem that we were wanted to work on, then we had to think about who are the people that the problem is impacting the most, who are the people that are farthest from justice with the problem, and whose voices are not heard about the problem. And our next step was to start to engage with those people to see what were their perspectives. And then we went back to the problem. You can see the arrow going back and forth. What we thought was a problem wasn't the problem, something else was the problem. So we spent a lot of time going back and forth before we ever started to engage with our partners from the meta empathy component in the solution finding. And the solution finding, we might kind of have some ideas about what are some solutions to the problems through the meta empathy that we engaged in. And then we might say, well, we want to go back after we have identified the solution to engage with the people who are farthest from justice from that solution. So it is a very recursive um, um, uh, process. And it was only until we kind of had an idea of what could be a solution that we decided to prototype and test that solution. And we did it with what we call little bets. These are things that could be quickly done, that don't require a lot of resources, that can be adapted, that can be changed, that can be revised. Or if that little bet failed, we might go back to the solution finding. And so this process was adaptive and recursive to all of the information that we gained through it.
And so one of the focus areas was student voice. And so there was a student voice working group. And from that, there was a lot of really great work, and it's still happening, where there is a student ambassador um, group, which is now a course where those students are learning about equity, diversity, and inclusion concepts for credit in the high school, and those are student ambassadors that represent um, the school in many ways. Some have participated in the Department of Education um, events, and they have also presented at a conference that I'll talk about in a minute. And so they've had some really great opportunities there. Another is having a student representative on the school committee so that there is a voice for students at that level. Another is the middle school student equity councils. So that is an opportunity to build leadership at that middle school level. I mean, middle school is tough. And so to give middle schoolers a purpose and something to focus on in the area of justice, I think helps them to grow into mature leaders. And then finally, we had summer interns in the EDI office. That's the office that I oversee. And these students, they did tons of work, but they did a lot of learning as well. And just because of the experience in the office, understanding how we run, looking at restorative justice and doing circles and um, putting together materials and creating documents and wonderful things for our EDI starter kits that I'll talk about later, and for our conference, they had an opportunity to really dig deep. And we're hearing from one of our college students that because of what he learned in these spaces, he is far better off than his other Harvard friends. So we're really proud of that.
So, equitable design requires a recursive dialogue between the problem definition and meta empathy through empathy interviews and other tools before exploring solutions and testing them out. Meta empathy requires teams to identify who is farthest from justice in relation to the problem. Meta empathy requires teams to listen to and include those who are farthest from justice throughout the problem identification, solution finding, and prototyping process. So, what I'd like you to think of a little bit now in our pause and ponder is, what are some problems that your district is contending with? Who are those the farthest from justice in relation to those problems? And who needs to be listened to and included? And if you'd like to share, you can put it in the chat and we will put it on the banner. I'm going to give you a minute, and I know that's not a long time, but I'll give you a minute to do some pondering. Wow, a minute goes by quickly. And so I hope you had a moment to be able to think about what are some of the problems in your own school or district and who might you need to include. Increased ELL support as our ELL population increases. Yes. Lack of interpreters, getting difficulty getting parents into the school to be included in the educational decisions for their children. We're actually going to talk about that in a little bit. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa. So let's move on. Oh, what are some? Oh, there we go.
So, seeing that, there is this work that needs to be done, how does it get organized? I love this phrase, everybody, nobody. So, if no one is assigned to a task, and it's just up for everybody, go ahead, whoever grabs it, it's just not going to get done. And so, that is why the EDI office was created, because there's got to be a way to organize this work, to build the capacity within the district. How does this work get operationalized? And so that is why the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion was created in 2021. And so, of course, you always have to start with a vision. And the vision was and still is to be a leader among peers as a learning and workplace environment that is representative of our nation and global society, accepts and values everyone, appreciates our common humanity, and understands that our diversity and layered identities are what makes us unique as a school district. So, lifting up our diversity and connecting with each other, our common humanity, is the main vision. And being a leader amongst, those who are in this state. And we have been known and seen as folks doing some really great work. And it's really because we're intentionally designing the work. The mission is to move forward with urgency because there's no time to wait. It's been long overdue. And the purpose to create and sustain a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive school district that is reflected in our policies, practices, and workspaces. So you can't change anything unless you put it in writing, right? And so that's what we're doing, is changing policies and the way that we do things, and creating welcoming spaces so that everyone can feel like they belong. And so here's just a few buckets of it doesn't really represent everything that happens in the office and also across the district, because this isn't just one office doing the work. We do our work in collaboration. So, the first column there is collaborate. Collaborate on school policies, procedures, and practices to ensure they're equitable and inclusive of all employees and students, and they promote positive relationships. The next, collaborate on affinity spaces and groups that promote inclusion and engagement for students. So we're coming together for those affinity spaces so that we can, feel included, but also help our students feel included. The next is collaborate with schools to integrate trauma informed care and restorative practices as a way as a practice to approach repairing harm. So instead of the usual punitive way of responding, we want to take a restorative approach. And it takes more than just one person to do that. We need to come together and collaborate to do that. The next column is support. So support the district in creating positive and academically rigorous school learning environments for all students. So the office is building capacity for that, so that it is not just the one person going out and doing the work, but that in each school area, any workspace, that there is someone that is organizing others to do that. Support the next box, support educators in using instructional curriculum materials that decolonizes learning for students by providing more mirrors than windows. Students need to see themselves in the curriculum, and not just looking through a window to see the experiences of others. They need to see their value, and we need to show them their value within the curriculum that we choose. The next is support employees in professional learning workspaces or workshops that center our work in the focus areas and on equity, diversity, inclusion, and social justice. So everyone's learning. I mean, a lot of this EDI work is newer to many folks. Having someone like me in a school district is newer, and we're seeing EDI directors or coordinators or assistant superintendents like me popping up in all the districts because I think that statewide, especially in the commissioner's office, they're seeing a need to make sure that we are culturally responsive. And then the last is to establish programming that promotes student voice and leadership, establish programming in unity with community organizations to work in partnership towards student achievement, and to establish programming that supports employees of color and EDI co-conspirators through affinity spaces and groups that promote inclusion and agency. Very key. And I just want to keep us moving along because we don't have a lot of time. But I do want to highlight the ACT, Achieving Change Together conference. So this is an annual conference that our district does, and it's on election day. And so we hosted our third annual conference, offering about 85 workshops. We had pop-up restaurants because we had 3,500 employees in our district um, asked to attend. So we took over the high school and had a variety of workshops organized by this office, and our chair is amazing. And we had a district-wide planning team. So again, it wasn't just on the shoulders of the office, but connecting with IT and facilities, as well as all of the other community partners that we have to pull this off. And as I mentioned earlier this summer, interns and district-wide high school students, the ambassadors, they also participated. And as an after um, gift, we coordinated and collaborated with the bilingual department to give out EDI starter kits. And that was from our grant as well. And that was to give culturally responsive materials, books, resources, so that again, kids could see themselves in the books. And so here's another uh, pause and ponder. So, who are your existing allies, and who might you want to engage or include in this work in your district? You have to find allies. You can't do it on your own. This work is too hard to lift. So, take about 1 minute or less, just because we want to leave time for questions at the end. We have one more segment. So I'm just going to stop us here just so we can continue to move on.
So I spoke about some little bets and what are some things that we can do that are quick, responsive, and that may make an impact. And one of our problem definitions that we had come up with was that we wanted to ensure that families, multilingual families, had a way to contribute to their school community in meaningful and governing ways. And so we prototyped some things that we're going to share with you now that we are revising and prototyping again, but they're having a good impact in our district. The first is that we've invested in community facilitators. They are staff members of Brockton Public Schools who speak Hibernian, Portuguese, Spanish, Haitian, French, Hmong, Laotian, Chinese, and their work is to facilitate communication from the home to the school to ensure that they can participate in all of the aspects of school, and they can be partners with their schools. We also invested in ELL parent advocates. They speak Cape Verdean, Portuguese, Spanish, French, and Haitian. And their role is to support families in all of the of anything that might uh, influence learning and being ready to learn in school. So, for example, if someone is struggling with medical care, um, that might influence a child's readiness to learn in school. Um, Food might be hinder their opportunity to learn in school, their readiness. And so they all have district cell phones, and so they can be contacted at any time, and we publicize that for schools and for parents. We then established what we call the Multilingual Family Communication Center. It's a call center, and we have signs on every single building where if you need support in a language, you call this center and someone will be there to assist you. We also established what were these email addresses, and these email addresses are for staff members. So talk Cape Verdean or Portuguese at bpmsa.org, talk Haitian or French at bpmsa.org, talk Spanish at bpmsa.org. And so if any staff member needs to communicate with a family, they can email that email address, and someone will support the teacher, the school, the counselor, anyone that they need to communicate. And it goes to all of the staff. So if someone is busy, another staff member can help with it. We have a very active bilingual pack. And we have multilingual movie nights. We have family game nights. Next week we're having a resource fair for the summer. We collaborated with the EDI office to provide professional development for administrative assistants and paraprofessional clerks over the summer to support the establishment of a welcoming community. We have an annual multilingual resource fair in November where we have around 150 to 200 people come to learn about all of the agencies in Brockton who can support them, their children, and their entire family. So we have the Brockton Neighborhood Health, we have SNAP, we have a farmer's market. Everything comes to them, and our interpreters walk with them around all of the sites so that they truly have access to the information. And we've established a clothing closet at the Parent Information Center. So any family who needs clothing resources can go and get what they need right there at the center. We've also done infusion of equitable design principles in professional development planning and evaluation. So when people in Brockton are working on establishing professional development, they are asked to think about all of the communities and how does it pertain to them. And then when participants evaluate them, they evaluate them on those same principles. And then we created a welcome mat. This is in 13 languages, and it has about 10 key words and phrases so that any person who comes to our school can have some access to information, and the clerks can dispense information. So things like, what grade is your child in? What is your child's name? What is your child's teacher? It's there for them. We have professional development for administrative assistants and clerical paraprofessionals. We've done it for all paraprofessionals, K through 12, on multilingual learners. We've provided professional development on for paraprofessionals on leveraging student experiences from the EDI office. And we've done professional development for paraprofessionals on the CEL curriculum. That's all since August. We have done this all since August. So 1 minute Given the demographics, relevant research, and values, given the problems and those farthest from justice, take a minute to ponder. Are there any district wide solutions, little bets that you and your allies might like to explore? I will give you 1 minute. And 1 minute is up.
That went by fast, huh?
Did.
Yeah. So we'll close with this, and then we'll have a couple minutes for questions. The Brockton Public Schools journey to acknowledge that systemic racism is pervasive in all aspects of the institution of public education is just the beginning. Yet through the work you've learned about today, equitable design principles have taken root and will help the Brockton district grow towards a more just and equitable future. So as you leave, how might you put feet to what you've learned today to make a difference in your district? Because we don't want to learn just to sit on it, right? We want to put feet to it. We want to move this work. And so I want you to just think about that as you continue, the rest of your week. And we have time for a few questions. I think Sal is going to come back and help us out to close us down.
Right. First of all, let me thank Renee and Kelly for a very informative and thought-provoking um, presentation tonight. It's clear from just reading over the comments that people were making that you've touched upon things that people are living with every day. You highlighted the relationship between trauma and the systemic sources that students and families are dealing with all the time. And I know that we're running late and we don't have a lot of time for questions, but let me ask if either one of you could comment on in this important work that you're doing, what would you call out as a couple of the most significant barriers that school districts need to overcome in order to be successful with this type of work, equity work?
Right. I think it's really people placing value on the need to be open to differences. I think that sometimes we're a little scared to have conversations. We're scared to approach something that is different. I'm not sure what to do. I might say the wrong thing. All of that. And life is really about taking risks, and we've got to be open to that. I mean, we're not going to learn. All of us are here. We took a risk to come on screen and be a little uncomfortable, but it's worth it because here we are, and we're learning. And so I think that if we can shift mindsets to help people understand how important it is, and not let our biases get in the way of that, we'll be better off. We'll learn a lot, and life won't be boring. I think if we all look the same, we all thought the same, that's boring. Opposites attract, I guess. And so I would want to learn more about something new. I think that's why I've traveled around the world, because it's exciting and we have an opportunity to do that with each other.
Yeah. It seems to me, as it did to one of our staff members, Marco, who wrote in the chat, asking people to participate, people who are generally marginalized and not empowered, asking them to participate and to speak up requires the creation of an environment of safety.
Yeah.
How did you go about creating such an environment where people felt safe enough to participate in the process even?
Do you want to take that, Kelly, or I can?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a very long process, and it's through relationships. All learning is relational, and if we can build our relationships with each other, then people might be able to be willing to take a risk. And when one person takes a risk, and they see that the world didn't end, that they were supported through that, then others follow along. But getting to know people on a one-to-one basis through relationships, I think, is really, really the key. And being vulnerable yourself. So if you can share the mistakes that you've made, if the growth that you've gone through, then then it's easier for other people to do that as well.
Thank you very much for those comments. It strikes me that in our own research on trauma-sensitive schools, we found that there were three overarching foundational elements in creation of a trauma-sensitive school. There were changing a belief system, or so in adopting new and transformative beliefs, developing a shared understanding, and then engaging together in reflective and reflexive practice. And those three pillars seem very, very consonant with equitable design also, I must say. I know I speak for all of us in the audience when I say thank you once again. Thank you very much for your sharing your thoughts this evening, and maybe we'll look forward to collaborating more in the future also.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
us.
all. Good evening.
Thank you for being with us tonight.